I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, our first episode back after the Oscar nominations, after they have come out. So naturally, the shift of this channel is going to change a little bit. If you're new to the channel, what I've been doing for the past few months has been predicting what I think is going to get nominated at the Oscars. But now, in the few weeks leading up to the Oscars, we're going to be doing a series of videos, different each week, talking about what I think is going to win. This week, we're going to be talking about 5 categories that I'm worried about. 5 categories where I'm unsure of the winner. It can go multiple different movies, 2 movies, sometimes 3 different movies, 2 performances, sometimes 3 performances. So there's going to be a lot to discuss in this video. And then next week, I'm going to be talking about 5 movies that I'm sure about. 5 winners that I think will definitely happen. And sometimes that's helpful as well because you can overthink certain things. But, there's certain categories that you have to sort of be confident in and just go, you know what, that's going to be the winner. Let me lock it out and not worry about those categories so I can do an analysis on some of the other categories. And then from there, we're going to be talking about some of my reactions and analysis once we start getting award shows like BAFTA, like SAG and BJ and DJ, and then how that helps us indicate our ultimate predictions for the Oscars. And as always, if you guys like the videos, do like the video, subscribe to the channel. Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll always have a video. But then always, we do like to do some bonus videos every now and again. So you want to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those videos as well. And as always, I'd love to hear your comments down below. Let me know what you think are some of the categories that worry you. Some of my thoughts in the video. Who do you have in the Best Actress category that's really close right now? What are you going to be looking for? What will make you change your predictions if something crazy happens? Do you have any bold predictions? All that stuff will be fun to hear in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the first category that I'm worried about, which is the Best Actress category. And it really comes down to 2 performances, that being Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon or Emma Stone in Poor Things. And right now I have the edge to Emma Stone, but I'll give you pros for both actresses. Emma Stone, of course, won at Critics' Choice. She also won at Golden Globes alongside Lily Gladstone. So right now she has the precursors. She's in a more well-liked movie than Killers of the Flower Moon, which is very important, particularly for the winners, because unlike the nominations, the winners are voted on by the entire members of the Academy. So generally, if you're stuck between 2 movies, it helps to be in a movie that is generally more well-liked. And really this year, the way I see the race, how it's going to shake up is SAG. And who wins at SAG will really be indicative of what I think is going to happen at the Oscars. Because usually we rely on Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA. But this year we have a bit of a unique situation because the Screen Actors Guild, usually their awards happen before a BAFTA. But this year, BAFTA is before SAG. And because BAFTA has been more unreliable in recent years because of their unique jury system, we don't always get a really head-on-head comparison as much. So BAFTA is going to happen first, and Lily Gladstone's not nominated there. So assuming Emma Stone wins there, that will be a huge boost to her campaign. And I think the reason why she's in front is because she won the Golden Globes, she won the Critics' Choice. Lily's not nominated at BAFTA. So if Emma Stone wins at BAFTA, I think that will give her enough momentum to potentially even win at SAG, which is at the later award show, because it may just seem inevitable. It may seem that Emma's winning at every award show, and then SAG will follow suit and give it to her. That being said, this is still absolutely a race because the 2 big ones that we look at are BAFTA and SAG. And this year, if you look at the SAG nominations, they were very accurate at overlapping with the Oscars. And even something like last year, they predicted the acting categories right at the Oscars, not BAFTA. So if we're going to put a preference towards an award show, it would be at SAG. So even if an Emma Stone wins at BAFTA, then Lily Gladstone, let's say she wins at SAG, then we're going to have a real race, and it's going to be really unsure on Oscar night. I would lean probably Lily Gladstone there because I appreciate the voting and the win at SAG, particularly if she has a really great speech. This is the first year that's being broadcast on Netflix, so I do expect a lot of virality from a lot of the speeches, and they will actually affect the campaign even more so than other years. So ultimately, I think this race comes down to SAG. I'm really worried about it because if Emma Stone wins at BAFTA and SAG, then of course, naturally, I think she's going to win at the Oscars, but Lily Gladstone needs to win at SAG. And if she does win at SAG, that still may be enough to make it a conversation and to put her over the edge and to maybe even give her the win at the Oscars. But it's going to be really close because Emma right now has the momentum, but Lily needs those awards, needs to win certain industry awards just because she's so great at giving speeches. And I think a lot of her narrative of her winning was not only she gives a great speech, but that her win would be a historic, important win. So if Gladstone does win SAG, that will be enough, I think, for me to give her the nod. But right now, we're still in uncharted territories. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. Then the second category I'm most worried about is Best Adapted Screenplay. It is a three-way race right now, and it could go to none of them. We're really in an uncharted territory here. I think out of all the major categories, maybe out of all the categories, period, this is the one with the most unsureness for me, where I'm really worried about this, where I'm really not sure what's going to happen. Because you have not only two movies competing like you do in most categories, you actually have three movies competing in my mind. Of course, we have Oppenheimer, and that's a contender because it is the clear frontrunner to win Best Picture right now. And if it does win Best Picture, most of the time, Best Picture winners also pick up a screenplay award, even in years where it's really close and competitive. Green Book beats out The Favorite and wins Best Picture. Last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once beat out The Banshees of Inisherin. I saw people in both those years going, well, they're going to want to give The Favorite something, so they'll give it to Screenplay. Or they'll go, oh, they're going to want to give Banshees of Inisherin something. They love that movie, so they'll give it Screenplay and they'll give Everything Everywhere All at Once director. It didn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. Because the Academy is so much larger now, these narrativizing of certain categories don't really happen. They don't necessarily go through and go, oh, I want to give support to one movie. A lot of people go, I love Everything Everywhere All at Once, or I love Oppenheimer, and boom, 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 I give my love to all the movies in all the categories. And we've seen this time and time again. Most of the time, the Best Picture winner wins a screenplay award. So if you think Oppenheimer is going to win Best Picture, it's very likely, I think, to win in the screenplay category. With all that being said, though, this does feel like a movie, as someone with, 8 years now, 8 seasons of predicting the Oscars with high accuracy, it feels like a movie where they reward Christopher Nolan for director. They don't want to reward him again for something like screenplay, so they give him director, they give him picture, some of the technical categories, and then they want to reward someone maybe like a Greta Gerwig or Jefferson. There is a bit of a feeling, particularly with just the film itself, Oppenheimer, it is a directorial achievement more so, I think, that it is a great piece of writing versus a movie like American Fiction or Barbie, which I think are a little bit more appreciated for their creativity, their originality, and therefore their scripts. So it does feel like a movie that maybe they'll reward Nolan for director and then go in a different route. And Oppenheimer also hasn't really been winning a lot of the screenplay awards. So even though it's the Best Picture frontrunner, it's not like it's had a history right now, at least at this point, of winning those screenplay awards. Because my second contender, American Fiction, that won at the Critics' Choice Awards. And if you remember the Critics' Choice Awards, they were very favorable to American Fiction. They nominated Sterling K. Brown pretty early on, and that was a signal to the Oscars. And the Oscars also overperformed and really liked American Fiction. It got in for score, which wasn't expected to. It got in for supporting actor, which it wasn't really expected to. So it did very well in that regard. This is also a writer-director, so instead of nominating Cord Jefferson, maybe they give him the win for writing. It's also a very funny movie, creative, and has a lot of laugh lines. So people, I think, will think of the comedy and the creative writing of the film and want to give it to someone like Cord Jefferson in this category. So that's an absolutely a contender because it won at the Critics' Choice Awards. But then we also have Barbie, and Barbie also has been winning everywhere. It won at the Critics' Choice Awards. It could also win at BAFTA. The problem is, American Fiction won Best Adapted Screenplay at the Critics' Choice Awards, but Barbie won Best Original Screenplay at the Critics' Choice Awards. So because Barbie is now in the adapted category, we don't really have a lot of precedent of what would win in the original or the adapted category because we have this major contender in Barbie switching categories. So I could say American Fiction won at Critics' Choice, but if Barbie was in that category, maybe it would have won. We don't know that. And the same could happen at BAFTA because Barbie is competing in the Best Original category there as well. So we don't really have any precedent to what's going to happen in the adapted category once Barbie is eligible. And we can't really rely on an industry award like the WGA, the Writers Guild, because they haven't had their nominations yet. And also, their awards are after the Oscars. So they're even more relevant than they have been in recent years. So, if you want to narrativize it, I think you would go with maybe American Fiction because, they really like the movie and they want to give American Fiction something. Or Barbie, they want to give it an above the line win, so they'll give it to Greta Gerwig. Maybe the internet buzz of Greta Gerwig's snub will help her in the adapted screenplay category and they're going to give her the win. Right now, though, I am leaning Oppenheimer because I don't really want to narrativize things. We've seen usually the Best Picture winner win a screenplay award over really strong movies. The Favorite was a really strong movie against Green Book. Last year, Banshees of Inisherin was a number 2 Best Picture contender. It just couldn't beat out Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was the eventual Best Picture winner. It's really tough right now, but there's lots to see happen. Then the third category that I'm worried about is the best original screenplay category. For many reasons, as the best adapted screenplay category, we don't have a lot of precursors to look on, and a movie like Barbie, because it was in a different category, and some of these precursors, we weren't able to have a really clear understanding of when these two movies go head to head, what will happen. And because Barbie has been winning the original screenplay category, we don't really know, is it The Holdovers? Is it Anatomy of a Fall? Is it Past Lives? What are the frontrunners? For me, though, it's going to be The Holdovers and Anatomy of a Fall, which with a slight edge to The Holdovers. And I have The Holdovers in it because it has the same amount of nominations as Anatomy of a Fall, but it has two performances nominated versus Anatomy of a Fall's one. And usually the writing award correlates to an acting nomination or an acting win. Usually, because writing and performance, I think, are very intertwined, there's a connection that usually the movie that wins the screenplay award usually has one or more acting nominations. So we have an edge there for The Holdovers. And The Holdovers has also been performing very well. Yes, it didn't get in for Alexander Payne for Best Director, but it did get in for something like editing. And of course, Divine Joy Randolph is the frontrunner to win for Best Supporting Actress. So maybe they want to pair that up with a screenplay. Alexander Payne's movies have done very well in the screenplay category, with The Descendants and Sideways winning. So they appreciate Payne's movies for the writing in them and the dialogue and the sort of mood and tone he brings to his films. They always appreciate the writing in his movies, so I think that's important. And it's also comedy. And like American Fiction, I think comedies do well in this category because you think of the laugh lines, you think of the clever and creative writing and some of the characterization that goes on in the film. And it's more obviously, I think, you think of it as a writing movie. But then we also have Anatomy of a Fall. And Anatomy of a Fall has the support of the foreign voters, which we know is an expanding branch within the Academy. It won Best Screenplay at the Golden Globes, which I think is big. Even though the Golden Globes don't have any overlapping members with the Academy, they did follow suit in terms of very similar amount of nominations, and they do have an international voting body as well, similarly to the Oscars. So there will be, I think, some overlap between the winners. So I think it was important that it won there. It also is a well-liked movie. I mean, Justine Triet got nominated over Alexander Payne in the director category. It still got in for editing. It got in for picture. This is a major Oscar movie, and The Holdovers has a chance and will most likely win for Divine Joy Randolph in supporting actress. But Anatomy of a Fall may go home empty-handed. So if you think they want to give Anatomy of a Fall some sort of win, they may want to give it to screenplay in a movie that's all about words and memories and how people think about things and back and forth and dialogue. It's so much about that and fighting and arguments and the realism of that. So it's not a funny movie, of course, but it is still very much a writerly movie. And again, because Justine Triet also wrote the movie, whereas in The Holdovers, Alexander Payne did not write the movie, there may be a slight appreciation for Justine as a writer-director in that way, and wanting to give her particularly that support for her screenplay. But we got a real doozy on our hands, so both screenplay categories are going to be really tough. And who knows? Maybe even Past Lives wins and surprises us all. Although I don't think that's going to happen. Then the fourth category that I'm worried about is the Best Visual Effects category, and this category has my favorite long shot winner to win, and I think is the most unsure category. Maybe number two to Best Adapted Screenplay, but definitely the most unsure in the technical award categories. And that's because when we look at the Best Visual Effects category, it can sometimes be a really easy one to predict, because in years where there is a Best Picture nominee, they almost always win. Movies like 1917 and Hugo, which you may not immediately think of as amazing visual effects movies, ultimately win because they're Best Picture nominees. And when people vote on the Oscars, it's all members of the Academy. So some people, if they really like 1917, they'll just predict it and not check it off in every category, and they won't necessarily consider the visual effects of the movie just because they like the movie, they want to see it win something. So usually Best Picture winners do very well in this category. But then there are years like this year in which there are no Best Picture nominees contending in visual effects. And what happens in those years? Well, generally, the most Best Picture-esque kind of a movie that seems like the most Best Picture type of a movie that would have been most likely to get nominated for Best Picture, usually those movies win. Interstellar, First Man. And when years like First Man come around, I remember I was predicting First Man on this channel. Everyone else was predicting Avengers Infinity War. It was insane. Of course, First Man was going to win. They weren't going to give it to Avengers. First Man had 4 or 5 nominations. Avengers only had 1. First Man was the most Best Picture type of a movie. And of course, it won. So that was an easy year. But in a year like this, you have to ask yourself, well, which of these movies is the most Best Picture like? it's a little bit more confusing. I think in the lead to win right now, you have the creator because it has a surprise sound nomination. It got in at BAFTA. It got in at Critics' Choice. So there's an appreciation for the visual effects. They're very well done in the movie, very, very realistic, very well blended within the film. So I think that extra added sound nominations shows that there's general support for the creator and its technical achievements. I think it is the front runner to win right now. But then you also have a movie like Godzilla Minus One, which is more critically well acclaimed, which is the sort of underdog story because it was the movie that came out of nowhere and it's this small movie with a smaller budget that still got nominated in visual effects. And I think there's an appreciation for the resourcefulness of what they did to make the visual effects look so good on such a low budget. But on the flip side of that, you also have a bit of a controversy because there's some people who think that the reason why they were able to make the movie for so cheap were that certain people were underpaid. So there's a little bit of controversy in that regard too. So what's more of a best picture kind of a movie? Technically the creator, because it has 2 nominations versus Godzilla Minus One only had 1. But Godzilla Minus One is more critically well acclaimed, so maybe it will appeal to more members of the Academy. But then you also have my favorite long shot dark horse to win, which is Napoleon for best visual effects, which on betting sites right now I think is plus 2,200. So bet $1 win 22. So, we're talking about really long shot odds to win. The betting markets really don't like Napoleon. But I'll tell you why I think Napoleon is absolutely a contender. It's because what I mentioned in this category, they like Best Picture winners or nominees, or they like movies that feel like Best Picture movies. Well, Napoleon in a way also feels like a Best Picture movie. And why does it feel like a Best Picture movie? Because out of all of the visual effects nominees, it has the most nominations. It has 3 nominations versus The Creator or Mission Impossible's 2. So theoretically, it is most well liked by different branches of the Academy and therefore ideally most well liked by other members of the Academy. And when I look at the years where Best Picture nominees were in this category, 2020, 2018, 2017, 2016, 2014, I looked at all those years and I went, okay, well, what were the reasons why these movies won? It's easy to say they felt most Best Picture-y, but that's not really scientific. So I looked at the numbers and I found that in 4 out of the 5 years, the winner of the Best Visual Effects Award also had the most amount of nominations as compared to the other nominees. So First Man beats out Avengers Infinity War because it has more nominations than Avengers Infinity War. Tenet wins because out of that lineup, it had the most amount of nominations. This year, that's Napoleon. So it should be, at least from historical precedent, 4 out of those last 5 years, in the past 10 years, where we didn't have Best Picture nominees in this category, because if we do have a Best Picture nominee, they're winning. But when we don't have that, they usually go to the movie with the most other nominations because generally that's probably the movie that is most Best Picture-like, most likely to win. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this category, but I can definitely see a situation where Napoleon wins at BAFTA and surprises everyone, and the next thing you know, it's on track to win at the Oscars. Watch out for a movie like Napoleon, but I still do think a movie like The Creator is in the lead. Then the 5th category that I'm most worried about is the 2 categories of Best Costume Design and Best Production Design. And I think that one movie is going to win both categories. It's either going to be Barbie or it's going to be Poor Things. And Barbie has a lot of the historical stats on it going for it. I think that's why I'm ultimately predicting it. But Poor Things is an absolute contender. In the production design category, I think Barbie is even more of a frontrunner than something like than Poor Things, whereas costume design is a little bit closer. And the reason why Barbie is such a frontrunner in production design, I think, is because there's an appreciation just of how much set that they built. Poor Things has a lot of CGI set extension on top of the production design and the places that they've built, but Barbie has just more physical locations, which I think the production designers and other members of the Academy will appreciate. It's also noted that 4 out of the last 5 winners have been past nominees. At least one of the 2 people nominated have been a past nominee. So if you look at this year, Barbie production designers Sarah Greenwood and Katie Spencer have been nominated 6 other times, and that helps their case because most of the time, for the last 5 years, they've given it to past nominees, and these women are past nominees who have yet to win. And then on the costume design side of things, Barbie is a frontrunner, I think, to win over Poor Things, although a less of a frontrunner as compared to production design, just because they love to reward past winners. The last 4 winners have not only been past nominees, but have been past winners. And Barbie's costume designer, Jacqueline Duran, who has won before, whereas Poor Things costume designer Holly Waddington had never been even nominated before, whereas Jacqueline Duran is a past winner. So Barbie has the edge there on costumes. But in terms of Poor Things' chances for production design and costume design, it has the originality. It's not based on an IP. So when they do reward movies and people who have never been nominated before or people who have never won before, like Ruth E. Carter for Black Panther, that's because Black Panther was a movie that was super original and super creative, and they hadn't really seen a movie like that before. So Poor Things may win because even though it doesn't have the historical basis in the stats of, a past nominee and a past winner, which they usually like, it does have the creativity on lock. And also, Poor Things is a more well-liked movie than Barbie. It got in for director. It got in for editing. It is it had 2 acting nominations, so it has more nominations more generally. And if you think Lily Gladstone's going to win for best, actress, and you don't really think Poor Things is going to win for a screenplay award, well, next thing you know, maybe it's going to go to the technical categories here in production design and costume design. Right now, I lean Barbie just because of historical precedent, but Poor Things, because of its creativity, of its world, it's a very deserving winner as well, and it can definitely pull off a bit of an upset, although I do think Barbie is still the front runner to win as of right now. But that's about it. If you guys appreciate the video, let me know in the comments down below, or just let me know your thoughts on some categories you're worried about, and stay tuned to next week where I'm going to be talking about 5 categories that you shouldn't be worried about, 5 categories that are locks, and explaining why they are so. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.